This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
What's happening, Power Athlete Nation? It's that time again. I'm joined with, as always, Luke Summers and Steve Playtech. What's happening, guys?
What's going on?
What's up, Danny? What's up, Luke?
We also got John Welbourn on the line. How you doing, John?
How are you, Danny?
And we got a special guest, John Meadows. John, how you doing?
Good. Great to be here.
All right. Before we get into the discussion, let's start with Luke. What kind of updates do we have regarding where we're at with Wade's Army?
Well, pretty big deal. I just started my donation page today, so I think we're really going to have a hike in donations. But we're 25% of the way there. I think we got like $7,000 donated to Wade's Army. And for those of you who don't know, Wade's Army is Power Athletes fundraising group to help build awareness on neuroblastoma, and we're supporting a charity called Wade's Wings. We kicked this thing off a couple weeks ago. We got the shirts finalized. There's going to be a ladies tank top coming out soon. So we're gonna have this thing up and rolling like full steam ahead. We're 95% of the way there. But if you haven't donated, please do so and start a team. You know, that's the biggest thing is we've got people just starting their own teams and you build awareness just through your social network, and you'd be surprised how many people can identify with this story about Wade. And without taking up too much time, Wade was a 2-year-old boy whose life was cut short from neuroblastoma, which is a cancer that attacks the brain and the central nervous system. So just get going with that as soon as possible. And if you guys have any questions or want to be more involved than just a donor or a sponsor, hit up Wade's Army at powerathletehq.com. That's our email address, or just hit up wadesarmy.powerathletehq.com. And that's going to give you a ton of info on everything that's going on.
Just some significance. Wade DeBruin was the little boy of a good friend of my wife. And what makes it really significant for me, and also actually for John Meadows, is Wade was a twin. And I remember seeing this whole thing play out when he got diagnosed with neuroblastoma, and then, battled it. Then it went into remission. And then when it came back and he finally, lost the fight at 2. I mean, we watched this whole thing, play out, and you're seeing the pictures of him with his twin sister. And dude, it crushed us, especially, having twins. And then also John has twin little boys that are 4 years old as well. So it just became kind of our champion cause when my wife asked, is there something we can do? And I was like, yeah, we got a lot of friends. We got a lot of dads that do this training. And as a father of a twin, it just, hit me definitely in the stomach. So we started raising it. We raised over $18,000 last year. And this year we're, I think, like 30% of the way to our goal, or 25% of the way to our goal was to get 30,000, and our goal was to help them raise $100,000 to not only fund research on this terrible disease, but also help the families that are out there fighting it. Because these kids basically live in hospice, they live in child care because it's so debilitating as a cancer that attacks all the nerve tissues, and it's definitely this is the little bit we can do. It's definitely pretty powerful. So please help us. Please join up. We're doing a big charity workout. We're selling T-shirts. We just got the designs up. They're pretty awesome. And it's a group effort, and we thank everybody for their help.
Yeah, the shirt's awesome. I wanted to give a little update too out here in ATL. One of my students, I mentioned it in class, neuroblastoma, and in my neuroscience class, and she works on neuroblastoma unit at Emory University Hospital. And so we're going to try and spread the word through Emory and the USG system hospitals to try and get some more people involved out here as well.
Yeah, we had I just got an email from a guy who actually had neuroblastoma at 18 months.
Wow.
And it didn't come back, and he survived. And now he's like 24, 25 years old and been following the CrossFit football stuff. And all of a sudden this thing came out, and he sent me this pretty teary email. He's like, dude, had, you're 18 months old, you don't know, but he goes, it just never came back. And I never knew why my parents like held their breath every time I went to the doctor. And he goes, now that I see it, he goes, thank you. I'm like, dude, anything we can do, man.
We should get him on the show.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So,
Luke, are there any details as far as putting together a team or about how you would go about doing that?
Yeah, sure. If it's super easy. Like every launch pad to get either a team or donate as a solo individual or join a team, all that stuff is on wadesarmy.powerathletehq.com. Or if you just go to Power Athlete HQ, there's a little WA in the left sidebar. You click on that, and there's an enlist column on the right side. You click through, and it's point and click as soon as you get to our Stay Classy, which is like our fundraising platform. You just click through and select a team to join or start a team yourself. And even if you as an individual want to start your own fundraising page, you can do that under a team. Like Tex, myself, our other coach, Espy, we all are under Power Athlete HQ. We join that team. So if you want to put your, like Denny, you want to go on, you want to put your page together, you can join the Power Athlete HQ team. Or, let's say you want to do it for your box. You want to set up a A3 CrossFit team, which we would love. Like that's what we really want to see is CrossFit gyms or not CrossFit gyms, whatever you want to call it. We just want to see groups of people get together and rally together and help fight this thing. And top donations or the top individual fundraiser is gonna get a spot at any cert they want. Same thing with the top team. So the top team is going to get a banner, some shirts, some swag. Well Food Co is going to be donating all sorts of tasty treats to some top donors. All that information's on that Wade's Army website on Power Athlete HQ. So it's pretty point and click. You get going, it's 3 or 4 clicks and you're set up and donated. So it's super easy.
Cool. How are we doing on a Power Athlete Team Series?
Well, the final event, it's like that song, The Final Countdown. The final event is coming up next weekend in just outside LA in Monrovia at CrossFit Team Academy. And Callie's going out there right now to do some preliminary setup. So it's going to be a good one, man. Get signed up if you haven't already. We got 3 teams from Balboa going, none of which John, myself, Callie, Ben are on. So we still don't get to participate, but it's the final one of the year. And then John and Callie and I were just huddled around a conference table yesterday talking about 2014 and how this thing's going to evolve next year. But it's good. Signups are good. It's going to be a great event. And yeah, we're ready. We're ready to rock. I always love coming back when Callie comes back from these things, because I get maybe 100 minutes of just lifting I get to watch, for better and worse, because you see some really great lifts and then you see some hideous things like dudes just dropping bars, rolling off their necks over their heads and like face planting and stuff like that. It's just no good. But it's always a trip to kind of do the video and get all the videos posted for everybody. Kind of sad to see that it's the last one. I'm excited because we move on from there.
Yeah, I guess sad that it's over, but excited for what you guys are gonna put in store for us for next year.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about, Denny. It's like it's been exciting watching the videos and the competition kind of evolve from that first one to teams showing up and really showing up to now thinking like, oh gosh, what do they have in store for us next year?
Yeah. And I think the team aspect really hit home with a lot. I've seen the pictures of everybody huddled around. I've watched the videos of like the team support. So I feel like, CrossFit football headquarters, you guys, if wanting that team unity to kind of like represent in a competition, I think you achieved your goal, because that's like one of the biggest things that I can see in watching those videos.
Well, good.
All right. Well, let's get to our guest, huh?
Yeah, let's
John
do it.
Meadows, patiently waiting. You can catch the guy on T Nation. He's wrote some great articles. I recently read your rear delt explosion one. 60 sets of like rear delt work in between your shoulder pressing. Pretty cool. I tried it and really did 30, to be honest with you. 60, I was like 60 with 15-pound dumbbells. Damn, I'll go 30. And I was smoked. But anyway, going onto your website, you can come across the Mountain Dog Diet. So maybe you can start with just introducing yourself and then, kind of defining what the Mountain Dog Diet is.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. The Mountain Dog Diet is, people always ask me what does that name mean? And there's no real magic behind that name. It's just I'm a big fan of Bernese Mountain Dogs, and I use that name, Mountain Dog, on the website forums all the time. So people started, kind of getting used to my ideas and, my thoughts around training and nutrition. They started calling it Mountain Dog Training just because that's the handle I was using. So it kind of stuck and it didn't go anywhere. And I thought it was pretty cool because it's personal. It's not just some, weird acronym I made up that's meaningless or something like that. So, so there's really two components to what I do on my website and what this is what I do for a living. I worked in the corporate world for 12 years at Chase Bank for 10 of those years and another bank for 2 years. The whole time I was doing coaching in this field and competing myself on occasion. And it's been something I loved since I was 13 years old. I actually did my first contest when I was 13 years old, which is pretty silly when you think about it. A 13-year-old wanting to be a bodybuilder is kind of nuts. But so, the diet part of this, is as we get older and as we gain more information, hopefully we try to do things better. And I can tell you guys that I've done some dumb stuff along the years training. I'm 41 now, but I tried to always keep an open mind. And the bottom line was I wanted to do what worked the best in terms of gaining muscle. That was kind of my mission. And there was a point in my life in 2005 where I got very sick. I was in emergency surgery and was a couple minutes from dying. And when that happened to me, I figured, you know what, there's probably a health component to this I ought to concern myself with too, and not just getting huge. So I took it a little more seriously in terms of the health aspect, and it really evolved some of my ideas. I saw a lot of the flaws in my thinking that I had in my earlier years and with traditional bodybuilding diets in general. And, it's funny, you guys are probably pretty well educated in, the benefits of fats and things like that. But in the bodybuilding world, that stuff was, it was kind of taboo. Like, you don't eat any fat, and some pretty backwards thinking. So I tried, I tried to educate myself on that, and my theories kind of evolved. But, one thing I would say is I have some ideas on the way I like to do things, but I like to approach training and nutrition from a kindergarten perspective, I call it, with an open mind and always wanting to get better. I hope that a year from now, I know a lot more than I know now. And I hope that 5 years from now, I know a lot more. So, I don't look at this, what I do, as dogma. It's not my way or the highway. It's just my thinking at the time based on the information I have and the experience I have. I work with 400 or 500 people a year. So I think I got a pretty good base to work from in terms of observing results and how things work. And, training has kind of been the same way. It's evolved over time. I'm a training fanatic. John's getting a little more familiar now with some of the things I like to do training wise. But again, it's what I do now, but I hope to get smarter. I hope to learn more and make it even better. So that's kind of how I, there's kind of the short story of how I think and how I process things and where I'm at.
I like when you go to Mountain Dog diet, you'll see like a list of, important things. The first one you have is you are what you eat has eaten. I really like that. And then the second one, fat is not the enemy, not even saturated fat.
Well, Denny, it's crazy. In the old bodybuilding days, the idea is that, high protein, high carb, and no fat diet is, it's super lean. And it's interesting because Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, actually posted his, what he ate on a day. And it was like, John, you'd be familiar with it. It was like 9 meals. It was alternating between fish, chicken, and beef. It was like probably about 9 to 10 grams per meal. And then I think he was eating probably about 300 or 400 grams of carbohydrates. And it was like the most amount of food I've ever seen for the least amount of calories. And I remember we did a blog post on it and people were kind of confused by it. And I was like, dude, it's a lot of food. And, but at the end of the day, the guy's pretty shredded. And, it was interesting. We did that post and then we got a ton of traffic. When Luke and I were looking at the search terms, the way people were finding us, it was all Rock's diet, Dwayne Johnson's diet. And so I think a lot of people had questions like, why does that style of dieting work for those guys and doesn't necessarily work for the masses? And I think, you're probably the best guy to answer it. But, my whole thing is, if you train hard enough, you got the right genetics and, a couple other elements, it kind of makes some sense. But, that's when I reached out and I started doing some research and found that John was, kind of into this paleo primal thing. And if you guys look on T Nation, John's pretty fucking jacked and works with a lot of top pro bodybuilders and is using a different approach than the classical bodybuilding. So, I hit him up and we started kind of going back and forth and talking about different stuff. And he sent me some diet and some training. And it's pretty interesting when you start slicing up little elements and really looking at it. And what I was really fascinated by is some of the carb cycling. And it seems that nowadays the guys that are really, really, carrying a lot of lean body mass that are getting a low amount of body fat are doing some form of carb cycling. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think I would agree. Yes. And I think the key is it's using carbs at the right time. And, this is a debate that can go a million different ways. You hear that meal timing doesn't make a difference. It's calories in versus calories out. I personally don't agree with that. I think the studies that were done on that were done, not in the context, John, that you and I are familiar with, which is getting in the gym and busting your ass.
Sure.
If you're doing that, there's a lot of things that are happening inside your muscle cells. For instance, you have carrier proteins that glucose transporters, GLUT4, that will go to the surface of the muscle cell, the cell membrane, allow glucose in. And it'll do it from mechanical tension, which just means from training heavy. And it'll do it just from eating carbohydrates at the time, because carbohydrates, as produces, an insulin response, and insulin does this. So there are some things that are happening physiologically when you train that you just can't deny. And you can't say that if I eat 50 grams of carbs, when I wake up, it's going to do the exact same thing to my body as if I consume 50 grams of carbs, while I train. So when you consume carbohydrates, in my opinion, it has a really big effect on muscle growth, being one of the factors, and then also just your ability to train hard. It's a very, I do think most people would agree that it's a pretty usable form of energy that you can train with some volume. And John, I would add that my approach is, I like to, the way I think of this is I like to match training and nutrition together. I think a lot of people have an idea of how to train, but they don't really match their nutrition to it, and vice versa. So I think there's this, based on the way you train, you should adapt your diet to that. Or vice versa. If you have a certain way you want to eat, then, if you don't want to be in the gym longer than 20 or 30 minutes, you want to do real quick workouts, then, maybe a lot of calories that I would normally expect someone to consume around training, maybe that wouldn't be the best approach. So, that's kind of what I like to do, is match nutrition to training, make sure they fit well together. And back to your point, John, the carb piece of this, Yeah, I think it just comes down to when you consume them and, what your body's going to do with them at that time.
What's kind of interesting is John shot me an idea of actually consuming some carbs and protein during the workout. And what's interesting is, those of you guys that are listening, and I'm sure Denny and all you guys, we all train at a fairly high intensity and a fast pace. And so I'm in there and, I literally have my iPhone and I set the time and, I'm trying to get as fast as I can and, really doing 60, 90, even, 90-second, minute and a half rest sets in between my squats and my stuff. And I remember I'm like, I'm taking this during the workout concoction, which at the time, before I put any flavor in there, fucking tasted like disgusting wet dog, as John liked to call it. He calls it the goat balls drink. And as I'm consuming it, this dude I have to use some machines. So I was over at the commercial gym, not at our CrossFit gym. And this dude comes over to me and goes, "You need to slow down. You're working too hard. You're burning too much precious muscle." And I remember I was so confused because, I can't fathom not going into the gym and fucking killing myself. I just don't know any other way to train. I don't understand the idea. Like I said, I watch these guys train and they're literally having conversations while they're in between, during the set. I watched a guy on doing pull-ups, and as he was doing pull-ups, he's having a conversation. I'm thinking to myself, if I can talk to you during the set, it's either not heavy enough or I'm resting way too much or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so what I really liked about John's training is it was a very similar to mindset to what we do, where it's like, dude, I'm going to fucking kill myself. I'm going to bang heavy weights. I'm going to go as hard as I can. And I'm going to train out on that edge of the envelope. And I'm going to eat a good, clean diet. And it just so happens that John uses his for, big, strong, guys that carry a lot of body mass and, step out on stage, where we use it for more like power athlete field sports stuff. But what I really came to like was, dude, he had a very similar to mindset like us. I'm sure even some of the workouts he sent me, I left and I was like, dude, we were joking before we started recording, I literally was walking around thinking I was going to throw up because my muscles were so pumped and I just wasn't used to that type of feeling within my individual body parts. I'm used to that, feeling from my body. Imagine, doing a bunch of prowler pushes and, heavy squats, which we've done, but this was definitely an interesting deal. So I knew he was the right guy for us.
Well, and then there's this irrational fear of overtraining too. It cracks me up. I put a post on Facebook a while back and I said, does overtraining exist? Can it happen? Sure. But you go to a gym and you tell me that people are overtraining. I've seen the same things that you're seeing, John. I saw a guy deadlifting while holding his phone in his neck. He had his head cocked to one side, holding his phone while he was deadlifting. That's the kind of stuff you see. People aren't overtraining. And then the other thing I would add is, there's a couple things. A lot of the studies of when muscle growth actually occurs, it's when people actually hit an overreaching phase, which is maybe you're not quite into overtraining, but you're getting there and your body says, holy shit, I got to make some serious adaptations. So, it does what it needs to do to be able to survive that kind of training. And you make some adaptations and you grow and you get stronger. The trick is to know when to kind of pull back, because sometimes you have to. And I try to build that into my plans. And then the other thing is, if you're sequencing exercises a certain way, you can stay healthy. It's very easy to do. And that's something in training, that's a huge facet that nobody talks about, how you sequence exercises. And I'll just give you one quick example. You walk into the gyms, say where I train, you'll see everybody starting their workouts with lunges. I personally feel that a lunge feels a lot better if it's done third or fourth in your workout rather than starting with it. There's some things that you just can't prove by science, but intuition and the way your body feels and the way 300 or 400 people a year tell you how it feels. There's an art to this too. And I think the best coaches are the guys that can take the science and take the art and blend it and not be too heavy on one side or the other.
Yeah, I like that. I agree wholeheartedly with that statement.
So let's talk about the fat intake as far as like pre-contest. John, say you're getting ready to get on stage, and from what I remember from bodybuilding, typically it was like a 12 or 13 week prep phase. Would your diet change as far as your fat intake when in that preparatory phase, or no?
Well, it kind of has to change, and let me tell you why. First, let me tell you this too. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that pre-contest bodybuilders are the healthiest model of people to look at.
Well, yeah, right.
So I don't want to.
Yeah, we kind of know it. I mean, I'm
assuming that you know that part of it.
Yeah, it's funny how you're like almost in your most unhealthiest state on a stage where you're getting points for looking the healthiest.
Yeah, and I'm crazy with blood work. I've got all my blood work going back to 1998. I've got 15 years worth of it in a stack of papers right next to me. And I know what's going on with my body during a show, after a show. I know what raises my HDL. I know what raises my LDL. I know what raises my C-reactive protein, homocysteine, everything, because I study that stuff. So to go back to your question, fat intake before a contest, what I like to do is it depends on how somebody's carbohydrate level is from the start. If their carbohydrates are pretty spread out, then I like to start with the meals that are furthest away from training and reduce carbs there. So for example, if you train, let's say you train at 6 o'clock at night, you get off work, you train. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your early morning meals. I'm going to start reducing carbs from those meals. And I'm doing this for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm trying to preserve carbs around training so that you can train your ass off. There's nothing worse than being pre-contest and going into train, having no carbs in your body, your muscles feel dead. It's a horrible feeling. I've done it a bazillion times, and you guys have probably had low carb days where you tried that, and training just sucks. It's just.
John, I ate less than 50 grams of carbs for 6 months and ate 0 carbs for 6 months and tried to train. I had this theory that a complete ketogenic diet would fix all my mental damage from playing in the NFL, and so I got all these papers on that they were using ketogenics or like a ketogenic diet to fix ALS and all these different brain disorders. So I decided, I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to be mad at the carb for an entire year, and I literally tell people, I'm like, it was the single most miserable point in my whole life.
Oh yeah, so and people will say, well, carbohydrates aren't essential, but you got to look beyond that. you got to look beyond that, and I would say too that the intention is to reduce inflammation when you're talking about ALS and those things, but eating carbs when your body's going to use them isn't going to drive your inflammation. And I think that's where people don't really understand what we do. If you're putting carbs in you and you're sitting around and you're watching, reruns of the Dukes of Hazzard, that's probably not necessary. But,
nice.
It's all relative, it's all according to the situation. And John, I think since we've added carbs to your diet, I certainly don't think you've gained any body fat. I know it hasn't been long, but, and you won't because you're using carbs. So, that's what I try to do is I try to start with removing carbs away from training to preserve that training period. I try to, under no circumstance, take carbs out around training. So the next logical step that I have is then I might start reducing fat. It's not because I think fat is bad for you. It's just from a simple caloric perspective. When you start talking about getting guys to 4% body fat, my last couple of shows I've tested underwater at 3.7%. You just, there's just a certain calorie level. You just have to go down a little bit. And I'm not a big believer in cardio. I think cardio can kind of backfire on you after a while and actually make you fatter. So that's kind of my approach. So reduce carbs away from training, and then we'll start to reduce some fat, and usually that'll do the job. That usually can get people down pretty daggone lean, depending how long you push it.
Yeah.
Well, what about a better question? Like, let's say you had somebody contact you and was like, hey, I'm 150 pounds and I want to weigh 250 pounds.
Yeah.
And they send you their diet and you realize like this person eats like crap. I mean, what would, in terms of like trying to put on, a massive amount of weight, and you realize it's probably not something that's going to happen in a year. It might not even happen in 2, but would there be kind of a systematic approach in terms of being like, I just want you to go eat everything out there? Is there kind of an idea? Would you game plan that? Or would it be something like, hey, I want you to just start making better choices? I mean, because it's interesting. We get 2 types of people in CrossFit football land. We get people that, hey, I want to be really strong, or you get guys like, I've never lifted weights, or, guys like Playtech or myself or Luke, I mean, who are already pretty strong, and I'm looking to try to maximize performance and be as big, as strong and able as I can. So would you say that you get people I'm sure you've been contacted like people like that. What's kind of the mode of thinking when you get an email like that?
Well, I'm going to look at a couple things. So is it one of these guys that has one of these insane metabolisms that, I've got a guy right now that's 155 pounds, and this guy eats 3,800 calories a day. That's a pretty fair amount of calories for someone who weighs, $150.
Sure.
So you're going to run into guys like that. And when you get into situations like that, you can eat all the fish and egg whites and chicken in the world, but you're not going to put on the amount of muscle you need to. You have to opt for more calorically dense food, more whole eggs, more grass-fed beef, things like that. So food choices are going to get more calorically dense. And if it's somebody that burns through food like that, then, I'll be honest with you, I might have them eat a pizza after they work out, after they do legs. I might have them go to Donato's and eat a pizza. They really need to, the bottom line is they need to get into a caloric surplus, and you can only eat so much clean food. I mean, think about this. Think about, like, let's say we wanted to have 150 grams of carbohydrates after you work out. Think about how much damn potato that is. That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's roughly, what is that about? That's roughly 2 cups of grape nuts cereal. And then I think that would be about 2 cups of, maybe it's 3 cups of white rice. Is that 3 cups of white rice?
Well, we use about 40 grams in a cup. So 48.
Geez.
That's almost 4 cups of rice.
Yeah, that's a
lot of freaking food. So
that's a lot of rice.
That's a lot of damn rice. So, I might take somebody like that and I might say, hey, you know what? Go get a box of Captain Crunch, or go get a pizza. Do this twice a week. You get somebody who burns through calories like that, they're not going to get diabetes, from eating a bowl of cereal, or a big bowl of cereal, or 2 big bowls of cereal every week. So, I'm a little more laid back with food choices. Then you got the other people who are, maybe their metabolism isn't that fast. They just don't know how to eat. So, the first thing I'm going to focus on is, are we getting your peri-workout nutrition correct? And when I say peri-workout, what I mean is before you work out, during your workout, and after your workout. Now, we've always read about this window of opportunity after you train. And I've got a little bit, I used to subscribe to that theory, and I don't think it's a bad theory because it makes sense. And it kind of goes back to the conversation we had about GLUT4 and glucose transporters, but I have a little different spin on it. John mentioned drinking protein and carbs while you work out. That has to be a very specific type of carb and a very specific type of protein for it to work. 99% of the stuff that's out there will not work. It has to be assimilated by your body in a certain way. So if you do that, you have some, that's kind of my number one thing is I like to, let's nail what you're doing while you train. And we could get into a big, long discussion on that. I love that. It's probably my favorite thing in the world to talk about. But then what you eat before and after you train. So that whole window around training, let's perfect that first. And then let's work our way out from there. Okay, now let's talk about your lunch. Now let's talk about your breakfast. So, and I'm not real strict on food choices. I think there's some flexibility in your choices that we should all have. If I tell somebody to eat a cup of oats and they say, well, can I have sweet potato instead? Sure. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, have a sweet potato, or if they're eating, chicken, well, can I have, a piece of wild salmon instead? Yeah, absolutely. Let's just account for the calories. But so when it comes to mixing all these good, healthy foods, I'm very, very flexible in that. And I think the more variety, the better. So little different approach. It's more from the ground up than, the other guy who maybe trains hard but just has a crazy metabolism.
Would you say that people are more chronic undereaters or overeaters? I mean, it's been amazing actually for, we always tell people whenever they start training, like I'm not a huge fan of weighing and measuring my food for most people because, but I always ask everybody to do it just because I think everybody's perception is off. I either meet people that are like, have no concept of what a cup of something is versus people that actually weigh and measure or even just do it for like a week just to get an idea how much they're eating. And it's usually pretty funny when they come back. They're either like nobody's ever dead on. So it's pretty interesting. Like most of the people I've seen that want to put on weight are usually terrible undereaters. And the people that are like, man, I'm having trouble leaning out. You haven't count their food. And all of a sudden they're like, dude, I'm eating twice as much as I thought I was. And it's pretty hilarious.
That's pretty common. And the flip side of that is I have these guys that come to me and say, man, I eat nonstop. I eat so much and I can't gain any weight. And then I have them break down a day for me. And they had, they had a bowl of cereal for breakfast. They had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch. And they had a protein drink, after they worked out. I'm like, that's not going to cut it, buddy. So, I see everything, man. I see it from all different angles. And, when it comes to weighing food, your point is one of the reasons why I do it. Another reason is because if I make a change in a diet, if I tell somebody to go, for instance, from 8 ounces of meat to 4 ounces of meat, if they haven't been weighing it, they're not going to be able to make the change. And when you look at a diet, people get really, really wrapped up in having this perfect diet to start with. And when I build a diet plan for people, quite frankly, I just want to get in the ballpark. I just want to get close because really what matters is how you adjust a diet plan based on what you're seeing. You take certain factors and, certain data and measurements and how the person, then some of the intangibles, how a person's feeling, all those things. And that's how you make adjustments, and that's how you get somebody where they want to go. So, I'm of the school of, hey, just get them in the ball game, get them on a plan, and then we can adjust as we go. But to get them on a plan, they need to be pretty precise with their, with their measuring. And then, once they're comfortable with it, then that's a little different. But I think you're right, John. People they're not really sure, because if you're not training for a competition or something, most people would think, why even bother, and I don't blame them. Why bother? So, that's kind of how I like to look at it. And then when I work with really competitive folks at the high levels, we're very precise. I mean, everything has to be very precise. Again, it's just when you make adjustments, you have to make adjustments with the right facts. So if you think somebody's eating 3,300 calories, and they're really eating 3,600 or 2,800, then you're going to make a change based on wrong information, and it's not going to be the right change. So I'm a little bit tougher on people, the higher up the competitive ladder they get.
Sure. What kind of biomarkers, what kind of factors do you think are most beneficial? Body fat, basic metabolic rate, blood work, weight, or just pictures? I mean, I'm sure people do all gamut of things. Is it something like measurements? I mean, what kind of factors would you really like hang your hat on and be like, you know what? Okay, obviously body fat's good, but then you look at a dunk test versus a skin fold versus a bod pot. I mean, there's so many different metrics for necessarily testing body composition. And I'm always interested to, what's really those ones. I mean, I can only imagine a bigger one is probably with under 4% body fat, your joints must have been on fire just from, the lack of fat. I mean, to be that lean, I know when at my best, I think I was like 8% at a little over 300 pounds. And I remember I was on during practice, I took a hit and I got a massive bruise. And I went in to the doctor and he looked at it and he goes, I'm like, dude, I've never bruised like this. And he's like, I think you need some more body fat.
Yeah. Your joints are, saturated fat. So, well, you can find flaws in every type of measurement, every body, whatever. But if you take into consideration, different factors, it'll paint a picture for you. So, for instance, what I like to do is I like to take somebody's either their top or their top 2 highest skin folds. So, where are you the absolute fattest? If somebody's worst skin fold is getting better, then they're going in the right direction. Now, if you get something like, let's say somebody carries fat around their stomach, and then, why measure their biceps? They don't carry fat there anyway. So who cares if their biceps get a little bit leaner, but they don't have any reduction in abdominal fat? So I have this, I don't know if anybody else does it this way, but I only care about the person's worst sites. And that's what I'll track in terms of body fat. And I typically just have people use skin folds. In a perfect world, I'd put everybody in a DEXA machine, but that's just not realistic. So I try to make it very doable, very executable. I don't want people's updates to be something where they go, oh my God, this is going to take hours. No, just snap a picture, take your 2 highest skin folds. Some people ask for their waist measure. It depends on kind of what their goals were at the beginning of the program. I like to know how somebody's strength is. If somebody, for example, loses 5 pounds, well, if they tell me I was weak as a kitten, I got crushed under the squat rack, then, maybe that 5 pounds wasn't good. Sorry. you teed that one up for me.
Yeah.
But, in a situation like that, the 5 pounds wasn't good. But if you look at all this stuff together, okay, their skin folds are going this way, their strength's holding, they feel good. They don't feel like shit all day. You can get a picture of where someone's going, and that's why I like to look at different factors, because any of them by themselves can be skewed. But if you pick out different factors, it'll paint a picture for you, and you can sort of tell what's going on.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah. No, so basically you need to set a roadmap. You have to get some constant feedback, whether it's strength gains, whether it's performance gains, whether it's some physical gains. Then you got to be able to adjust the calories of the training to kind of meet the needs of your athletes.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of powerlifters too. I work with some world-class guys, Matt Kroc. I work with one of the top raw powerlifters in the world. Their goals are a little different, but they're after more performance. A guy like me, I just want my legs to be big and veiny. Those guys want to squat 1,100 pounds, so the nutrition's a little different. But again, it goes back to what you just said. Figure out what the goal is and then build the plan to meet those goals.
How would you skin it for, like, let's say a power lifter or a guy like that? Would it be, is there, because they're obviously going to do their style of training that needs it. So then is it something where, your nutrition has to match their training, or do you adjust their training to kind of meet some of your nutritional recommendations?
Well, in those cases, I usually just do nutrition. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a pro at programming powerlifting, because I'm not an expert at that. My workout partner, Dave Tate, he's an expert at it. So with those guys, it's usually just nutrition. And, I look at it a little bit differently. If you have a huge gut, yeah, you can squat a little bit more. Hell, you bounce off your belly. But, the powerlifters that I work with, I'll give you an example. I just had Brandon Lilly. This guy is a world-class raw powerlifter. He just dropped 30 pounds and PR'd every single lift he has by at least 30 or 40 pounds, I think it was.
Wow.
And damn.
He was pretty amazed by it. And, that's pretty common with a lot of the guys I work with, because, I know people love this if it fits your macros type eating, where you can eat Pop-Tarts all day long instead of oats and sweet potatoes if you want. But there's just something to nutrient-dense food that makes your body function better. And I don't know why that's such a damn hard concept to.
So what you're saying is eating real food makes you stronger? That's crazy talk.
I know it sounds insane, but
I feel like I've heard that somewhere else. I don't know.
But
crazy pills.
As normal as this sounds to us, though, you go do some Googling and you go tinker around on some internet forums, and you're going to have a huge school of people that'll tell you all that matters is the amount of carbohydrates, the amount of protein, the amount of fat. Nothing could be further from the truth. You can't tell me that eating a piece of fried chicken from KFC is going to be the same as eating some whole eggs with a little bit of organic red palm oil on it. You can't tell me that's going to have the same effect on the body. So with a lot of these powerlifters, John, it's just a matter of changing their food choices. You know, they're not going to a buffet every night, and their strength goes up, and they're happy. They're thrilled. They're like, oh, my God, I didn't know you could do this. Now, I used to train at Westside Barbell with Louie back in the 90s. And this, you know, our standby nutrition plan was, you know, we'd go to Bob Evans before we trained. We'd go to McDonald's after we trained. I would drink chocolate milk pretty much all day long, as much as I could. I mean, and I would eat potato chips at night because it was very calorically dense, and I could just gain a lot of weight that way, right? You know, so my actions, I don't quite do the same thing nowadays, but you know, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
So when I was out at Westside, Louis told me I was too slim around the waist to squat 1,000 pounds. My waist was only like a 38 or a 40, and he said I needed to get my waist up to at least a 46 to be able to squat 1,000. I was too narrow in the hips. And he's actually changed. It's Bob Evans and then either that Italian spot or a Chinese buffet.
Okay.
Hey, Welbourn, you've worked with some of those guys at Westside on their diet, right?
Yeah.
Cleaning it up, and you saw some good results from that.
Yeah, it was AJ Roberts hit me up. He was having some after I was out there while they were doing a Westside seminar. They were kind of going through some nutrition stuff, and his guys were really butchering it. And I kind of jumped in and was like, whoa. Telling the guys to make sure they hit Taco Bell, McDonald's, and Burger King so that they get a vast array of nutrients is not a good nutritional plan. And I can't sit and listen to this shit. So after that, AJ pulled me aside and said, hey, I'm having some sleep apnea and I'm having some real problems. Could you help me out? So I kind of just went back and looked at his diet, and he wrote everything down. I said, hey, let's change here. And we ended up getting him into a more paleo primal approach. And all of a sudden he hits me up and he's like, dude, I'm feeling really strong. I was like, that's good, right? And he's like, no, I'm just telling you, man, I don't know what happened. And I said to him, I was like, dude, just by getting rid of a lot of those foods, we're reducing inflammation within the system. He's like, my body's not hurting. My joints aren't hurting. I'm not waking up 100 times a night. And then I think he went out that after 3 to 4 months of working with me, he went out and set the world record and then promptly retired. And said, you know what, this is going to end my life. And, it was pretty cool. He wrote me up a real nice article, and then I presented on it at the Ancestral Health Symposium, and there's guys like Stan Efferding, who holds the world record in raw powerlifting and is also a competitive bodybuilder. And Stan, same deal, believes in fats. I mean, consumes a lot of saturated fat, a lot of clean carbs, drinks a lot of raw and pasteurized whole milk, and, is very in line with what John's saying. And so, here are two guys that are, some of the strongest guys in the world, and obviously working with Brandon and a lot of those guys that are eating a diet of real food, that are actually caring about what they're getting in and, are training in this same mentality. So I think, what's cool about having John here is he's so far ahead of the curve. And I always feel like we're ahead of the curve, and that's cool when somebody else is doing it, because like you said, if you check on any internet forum that has to do with bodybuilding or training or whatever, they're going to, you're going to have some 136-pound guy that's, going to have 12,000 posts. So therefore he's the best and the most knowledgeable individual because he posts the most. I always assume that if you have that many posts, you're not fucking training. And, those guys are going to be like, oh, it's not that, it's this, it's, carb backloading, carb front loading, carb side loading. And everybody's got some secret fucking plan, but it's kind of similar. And it's, and that was a lot of our mentality always was, what are the best people in the world doing? And you know what, if this guy's got the best performance, let me take back and see what he's doing. Let me take and use what I can, and then, go out and see what's best for me. And, I really appreciate and really liked what John was doing. It was pretty interesting stuff.
Hey, John, can I ask you a question? You had mentioned earlier that you tailor your nutritional advice to people predicated upon where they hold their fat primarily. So somebody holds it, I think you said around the bicep or around the belly. And then you also indicated earlier in the talk that you're really into biomarkers. I wonder, have you looked at any correlations between where people carry their fat? I mean, obviously cortisol is one, and kind of biomarkers that are consistent biomarkers for where somebody might carry their fat? And does that inform your nutritional advice?
You know what? I'm on the fence on this one. I actually have I got it right in front of me here. I actually have a salivary hormone test kit right in front of me to test my cortisol, because I pretty much only carry fat in my lower back. And so I wanted to see what my cortisol levels were. But
that's being a dad. We call that dad fat.
Yeah, I agree with that. Dad fat.
Because every dad that I've met, like I remember I came in after having not slept more than 45 minutes for like 3 months. And I remember I said to Lucas, like, dude, I reached back and I felt like I have this like back fat love handles. And I remember I called Rob Wolf and I was like, dude, what is it? And he's like, welcome to fatherhood. That's all he said. And then all of a sudden, and he said it like kind of like a smart ass. And then he called me after he had not slept for 3 months when he had his little girl. And he was like, dude, I got the body fat. He goes, I got the back fat. So I'm just saying that's dad fat. So I think what Steve's getting at, John, is how do we get rid of the dad fat?
Exactly.
Yeah, man, that when you hold it, okay. So assuming, so again, I'm on the fence. I can't say that I believe that we can change our diet to attack different fatty areas. I mean, like, for instance, you could say, okay, let's say we have a woman who carries it on her, her hips and thighs due to estrogen. So, if we feed her a shitload of cruciferous vegetables, is that going to help reduce estrogen and make her leaner? I don't know. I mean, I'm really, really on the fence with this because, and the reason why I'm on the fence is because I don't really see anything in the field working with a lot of people that magically zaps fat off a tough area to get rid of in the first place. I think a lot of that's genetic. A lot of it changes as you get older. So, man, I don't know. I mean, you look at a guy like Poliquin, and I think Poliquin talks about how he thinks that everything is happening for different hormonal reasons. And I'm sure that has a part of it, but I also think that we undervalue just our DNA. I mean, if you look at people and how their family members look, a lot of times you'll see patterns. People in their family carry their same fat in the same place. So I wish I could say I had this magical diet to get rid of back fat, but the truth is your tough areas are going to be tough. I mean, it's called a tough area for a reason, and it's going to be the last area you lose fat, and you're going to have to push hard to get rid of it. And then once you get rid of it, you have to be really, really careful about how you kind of adjust your new plan. Here's another thing I see with competitors. They get rid of it, and then what happens after a show? They pig out.
Comes right back, yeah.
Yeah, they pig out, and it comes back. And not only does it come back worse. Because your body just said, holy shit, this guy just put me through hell. So I'm going to hold on to this fat. As soon as I get a chance, I'm going to hold. These fat cells are not only going to get bigger and expand, I want to create more fat cells. And I'm going to make it harder for him the next time he wants to diet this off of me, because it's not normal. I don't want to be 4% body fat. It's not healthy. So a big, big part of somebody's success in competing is what they do after a show. And especially with women seem to suffer from this more than guys. And when their weight comes back and plus they add a little, it's always harder to bring them down the second time. It always is. I mean, it's really tough. So, that's
so essentially, I mean, this is what I tell our clients at the gym, that, I give them a sort of skeleton diet for a couple of weeks, and then I tweak it for them individually. But there's, being a biologist, the individual variability, and like you said, the genetics and family history, tough spots are tough spots, and they probably have a heritable component. So they're just tough spots for a reason. I like that. All right. So that's good.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about the dad fat, but whatever.
Hey man, I had a double.
I don't have to walk around with my shirt off on stage like you. I just have to pick up my kid.
My thought with the dad fat is it came on from not sleeping. So now I have this theory: if I'm in bed asleep before like 10 o'clock and I can sleep till like 6, and I can get a legit 8 hours, I'm going to sleep it off. And like consistency, I'm like, this happened when I was not sleeping. So wait a minute, if I get like a legit 8-hour solid sleep, like I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to drink as much water. I'm going to be as hydrated. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to do everything to get that, protect my 8 hours. That somehow, like, I'm going to wake up and be like, the body's going to be like, well, thanks. You finally restored what you stole from me. Now I'm going to get rid of your back fat because that was your punishment for not being sleep.
I just use that machine, dude, where you just wrap that like leather belt around your waist and it kind of vibrates the fat off.
Nice.
10 minutes.
Just
watching my favorite TV show.
While you're holding the shake weight?
Yeah. I'm holding the shake weight because you got to work on that grip.
Yeah.
So Tom Incledon hit me up, and there's a new technology that they are trying to pass right now that is actually localized injections that will dissolve fat. So they can actually put injections in, and then they use like some form of like cupping mechanism to like suction against the skin. And then over the course of a couple weeks, it actually ends up dissolving the fat cells. And so he was telling me about this. I'm like, you realize if this becomes commonplace, like, you know, we're really out of a job, right? And I'm like, I don't know if this is a good thing. We should fight this because, you know, if people really don't have to be workout to get rid of, to be in good shape, I mean, are they really going to train that hard anymore?
Well, you know, here's the thing, though. There's a difference between dissolving fat cells and looking good and then being fit, right?
So if you dissolve all the fat cells, you have no muscle. You're just going to look fucking like
you're going to look like an Ethiopian.
Or you're just going to look like a Shar-Pei. Just a lot of hanging skin.
A lot of hanging skin. That's attractive.
That's a good visual.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice. Luke, how you doing over there? You've been quiet, man.
I'm just soaking it all in, man.
Just soaking it all in. Remember those conversations or some of the questions people were asking you when you deliver the nutrition part of the nutrition lecture at the seminar? You were getting all kinds of questions about like carb loading and back loading and all that. And
I mean, we get those all the time. Like it's probably the same dozen questions we get. You know, well, what if carb backloading works for me? Well, then do it. Like we had that this weekend, right, John? And if I'm a hard gainer, what do I do? Eat more. You know, it's
fucking common sense.
Yeah, and a lot of it where people cross streams, so to speak, is, you know, when we lecture at our seminar, it's performance based, and the questions that people ask aren't always performance based. They're more aesthetics or longevity based. I mean, you know, John Meadows said, when these guys are going into their shows, this isn't the healthiest they've ever been. And people are trying to do this all at the same time, and it just doesn't work. And that's where we have to kind of keep recalibrating our lecture at the seminar.
That's a good point. You know, they see like a contest ready physique, bodybuilding physique, and they're like, man, look at the 6-pack cut all over the place. That's what I want to look like, you know? So they get on CrossFit Football, go with the strength template. And then, you know, I see the questions on the blog too. And it's like they want that look, but without like depleting, you know, calorie depleting or, you know, kind of putting in the strictness of the diet that it takes to look like that. They just think, hey, if I just chow down and eat as much, you know, protein and high fat, that I'll just kind of grow into a cut, ripped, shredded body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the biggest thing that I've seen is it's a lot easier to lift heavy free weights and train your body as a whole and just bang it out and literally get as big, as strong as you can. I mean, I was looking at, when I was doing some Googling on John, I mean, there's some pictures of Dave Tate in there, and Dave was, you know, big time power lifter. And there's some pictures where I actually went to CrossFit, had Dave come and speak to CrossFit, and I got invited to come listen as a, I guess, not a participant as much as the only other person that was close to 300 pounds, so he wouldn't feel like out of place with a bunch of 155-pound guys. And so Dave came in and spoke, and Dave's a big son of a bitch and real strong. I mean, trains his ass off. And then there's some pictures on them on the site of him working with John, and dude, Dave looks shredded. I mean, I was amazed to see how much he leaned out. And I'm thinking to myself, it's a lot easier to have banged heavy weights your whole life and then, obviously change your training up a little, change up the diet and diet down than it is to be a 155-pound guy and somehow magically get to 230 pounds or 240. I mean, Dave was probably 300 pounds. I'm not telling you. I mean, Dave looked pretty unhealthy. But I'm sure it was, and John can either validate or not, it was probably easier to lean Dave out and get Dave into that shape more so than it was to put on that 100+ pounds of body weight. Would you agree?
Well, and not only that, we got him down. He's Dave is, he's one of those guys that he's either full blown perfect diet, get shredded, or he's just eating boxes of Pop-Tarts every day. He's an extreme.
He's either in or out, huh?
There is no second, third, fourth gear with him. I mean, he's extreme as they come. And we did I've got Dave down to 230 and shredded, but we had a point where we had him down to 10% when he was we got him down about 250, and he was actually stronger when he was at 300. Yeah. And this is with needing a new hip. He needed a new hip at the time. He since has had it replaced. He needed a new shoulder. His performance was unbelievable. I mean, we're doing reverse band squats and he did 700 per set of 10, and he's doing dumbbell presses and he's doing like 130s for sets of 10. And for him, actually, I think he did something crazy too. I think he might've done like 110s for 25 or 30 reps. And for him, he's never been able to do that. So he was kind of like, holy cow, all that fat, maybe it helps you in a squat. That's kind of hard to debate, but the point is his performance was a lot better when his body fat was under control and he was fueling his body better.
Wow. I like it.
I mean,
that's huge. Yeah.
It makes so much sense, right? When you say it, those numbers and that kind of data, I don't know. I have like a no dove response kind of, but at the same time, it's amazing because there's so many people who are misinformed about it.
Well, yeah, it's this thing called the internet.
Yeah, the interwebs are fucking people up.
Well, yeah, everybody's a fucking expert. Yeah. And, that's the thing we kind of really battle with. And it's like, there's so much information. I mean, John's a couple years older than me. We're about the same age. And, I always tell people, like, when I was younger in training, I either had to call somebody on the phone or I had to, like, go to their house or go meet them. Like, there's no more, there was no internet, there was no email, there was no, there was nothing. Like, I remember going to the gym and or going to Zangus's garage, and that was how we got our knowledge. You actually had to go work with people and actually get to know them. And they didn't tell you everything the first day. You actually had to show up for multiple days. Now he's like, tell me everything today, and I'm never going to talk to you on the phone. We're just going to email, and then I'm going to try it for like 2 weeks. And if I don't get exactly what I want out of it, I'm going to get on the internet and tell everybody it doesn't work.
Yeah. All you have to do now is write an ebook, and you're famous, right? And once you write the famous ebook on whatever loading cycle you have, and you have no accountability. I've looked at some of these ebooks that some of my guys send me, and they're like, hey, should I try this? Should I try this? And I'm like, where's the data? I mean, this is just somebody basically writing an essay on what they think works, and where's the data? Like you said, they don't contact you. It's just buy my ebook for $29.95 and it'll work because it's magic. And good luck. Don't ever call me.
Man, it's no accountability.
If it was that easy, everybody'd be jacked, right? That's what I always tell people. You get people that are like, this is easy, just do this. Well, you know what? Even if you do everything I tell you to do, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to look like a freak, all right? Because it's not easy to look awesome. It takes a shitload of work and some pretty damn good genetics too.
Yeah.
Depending on what you
is I think Mark Ripto said, I'm impressed on what'd he say? He said, abs on a skinny guy are like big tits on a fat girl.
Yeah. I like that.
When we see a lot of people, and I'm like, I'm really not impressed that you're 155 pounds. I appreciate that you're 5% body fat at 155 pounds, but I mean, like that's not really impressive. I mean, what's impressive for me is to see, big, big, strong dudes that are able to carry a lot of lean body mass. And I think what's interesting too is with the NFL, guys see guys like Adrian Peterson or a lot of these professional athletes, and they think, oh man, what do those guys do for the training? And little do they know that those guys have a certain amount of genetics that a very, very small amount of the population has. And, I always tell the story. I was in lifting weights in Kansas City. And I remember we were coming back from training camp, or we were getting ready to go training camp, and we were testing 1RMs, and I benched 5 1/4. And Brian Waters walked in, and I think he laid down cold and did it 5 times. And then walked away and said, I've been sitting on the couch for 6 months and you've been training your ass off and I'm stronger than you. And I was like, yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Just a genetic freak of a human, and was very, very strong. I mean, it's why he's still, 14, 15 years later, still playing. I mean, Tony Gonzalez is another one. I mean, if Tony took his shirt off, you guys would be like, Jesus. And he's looked that way since we went to college at 18 years old. I mean, it's just very, very genetically gifted human beings. And I think what's hard for people is, you run into, I'm sure a lot of the pro guys and a lot of the pro bodybuilders, John will tell you, have a certain amount of genetic gifts. And, this is what I do for my training and this is what I do. And the problem is that people aren't, that are playing, against a stacked deck, and they figure, well, if so-and-so did it, then that's what I should do. And what kind of blew me away, and I remember Rafael, who we talk about, Rafael Ruiz, Rafa always said to me, don't show me your best, show me the guy that you developed, show me the guy that nobody wanted, that you took and developed into something. I mean, you have certain guys that from the time they're 6 years old are destined to play in the NFL and be professional athletes. Show me the guy that, was a walk-on that had to do it, that somehow built himself. That's what I want to know what that guy does. And I think that's the most impressive part.
Absolutely. That's why I always looked up, in bodybuilding. That's why I always looked up to guys like, back in the old days, it was a guy like Rich Gaspari or Tom Platz. I mean, those were guys who didn't have the Lee Haney genetic, the Lee Haney genetics. Those guys just busted their ass and, really, really maximized their potential. And, it's pretty frustrating when you're debating with people and they say, well, this is what Ronnie Coleman did, so I'm going to do what he did. You know what? I get that, but you're picking the tiniest percentile genetics and saying, Ronnie could have done anything and he would have looked like that. His legs would have looked like that from mowing his lawn. Those guys, their genetics are so good. It almost takes them out of the whole discussion, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of doing what they do.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how society, people do that. I want to do what Ronnie Coleman does, or you'll hear some of these sports announcers, who this guy, well, he's no Michael Jordan, and it's like, well, who the fuck is, man? I mean, why everybody's got to compare to the very top elite. Right.
Well, that's how we do. That's how we work it. But I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a deal where Ronnie Coleman has a training weekend. And part of it is you get to go and have a pancake breakfast at Ronnie's house. And Ronnie will make you pancakes. So it's in Dallas. And I think it's a weekend. You pay a couple $100 and you get to go have 2 training sessions. And Ronnie trains you. And then you get to go have pancakes at his house. I mean, we've been looking at it for years. And I'm like, dude, just the picture of me eating pancakes at Ronnie Coleman's house. So he's got a chef's hat on and an apron and cooking up pancakes. I was like, that should be, we should have a raffle and be able to go to that. I want to go have pancakes at Ronnie's house.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome.
He's sitting there with this row, with the apron on. And I saw the picture, and I think it was Diane Fu sent it to me, the Olympic lifter. And she was sent it to me being will you go with me? And I'm like, I don't know if I have time, but this looks amazing. I'm like, I mean, it'd be probably one of those things where you're sitting there eating at his table and you're looking around and you're like, holy shit, Ronnie Coleman's 350 pounds back there at off season. He looks like one of those myostatin bulls, and he's making his pancakes. Awesome. Who am I to say no?
Just bring your 12 egg omelet recipe.
Dude, you know what's funny about that is I didn't have pictures of that omelet. And so I was supposed to eat my late night meal. And so I had to go in and cook that thing up. And the funnier part was people were like, well, how come you didn't throw meat and bacon and all that in? And I was like, well, you can, but that was how many calories I needed to eat for my meal. So that's where that thing came from. It was actually, and as I typed it, I realized I didn't have pictures. So I actually had to physically go make it right after I did it. And then I was able to post it with the pictures. But we've got some good results on that 12 egg omelet.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask next because Luke hopped on and said, hey, if anybody who's going to do this, take some pictures and send it in, and I was going to see if that actually happened or not.
No, I'll get people take pictures of my wagon wheel pancakes. And what's funny is I think I ever told anybody. My mom was pretty upset with me on that wagon wheels thing because she now that she knows I have a gluten allergy, she somehow is upset that I'm telling the world that she somehow poisoned me with a bunch of like gluten-filled pancakes. And she's like, I can't believe you tell the world that I poisoned you. I'm like, Mom, I'm allergic to gluten, and you were stuffing me full of pancakes every day, and you wonder why I got sick every day. So my mom's not real happy about that.
But it made you big.
It's true. I'm telling you, man, pancakes will definitely put some size and weight on you if you eat them with every meal.
There you go.
Hey, that kind of leads into the submission question. You guys want to knock this out real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So Bulldozer emailed in and he says, I was wondering what your thoughts are with cheat meals when following the CrossFit football / paleo diet. How often do you guys do it? What do you guys eat? Just curious because I eat the CrossFit football diet, and when I cheat, which is pretty much never, I feel like shit and have regrets. Thanks.
So John, just some background. Our basic deal is like a paleo primal using dairy as kind of an accelerator for not only extra calories, but for growth, because we found a lot of growth out of raw and pasteurized and a lot of whole dairy stuff. So it's just basically a paleo primal with dairy. So for me on cheat meals, I'm not a big, like I told you, I got problems with the gluten stuff. So my big cheat meal is Mexican food. So I'll go out and eat like tacos, and I like guacamole, and I'm pretty basic in that. So I know when I go out to dinner with Luke and there's any chips there, Luke is the chip destroyer. Luke is to chips as Arnold Schwarzenegger was to, bad people and Conan. I've never seen anybody crush chips more than Luke, but for me, I really like tacos.
I don't really like chips. I just really like salsa. So, you don't want to be the weird guy eating salsa with a spoon. So I crush some chips, but and I'm a sucker for Mexican food as well. I'm not big on like desserts or cakes or anything like that, but every once in a while, man, if you're training hard and you drive by an In-N-Out, I'll get myself a milkshake. I'm not gonna lie, I go with a little milkshake from In-N-Out, but I'll stay as clean as I can with the In-N-Out stuff. Getting a double lettuce wrapped, stuff like that, but. How do I feel after it? I mean, I very rarely will bounce back and feel awesome in terms of training, but man, don't live life with regrets. If you're gonna eat a milkshake, just eat the milkshake and keep moving on. It's where things get slippery is when the cheats start to become really regular on a weekly basis, every other day, shit like that. But Mexican food is my personal vice.
John, what do you see for cheat meals?
Well, so number one, I tell people don't think you have to take any food out of your diet forever. Donuts, chocolate, I don't care what it is. Just as the gentleman just said, if you want to have it a couple times a week, I like to have donuts on the weekend, in the morning, Saturday morning on my way to train, actually. So don't ever get into that mindset where, oh my God, I can never have this again, or I can never have that again. All that does is leads to binging type behavior. Now, me personally, we have a chain here called Five Guys Burgers and Fries. I don't know if you guys have that.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
I love those. So what we like to do is Friday nights we'll go to Five Guys. I'll get French fries and I'll get their double burger. I love milkshakes. There's a Grater's right beside it conveniently, so I can hit them both at once. I had one instance this year when I was getting ready for nationals this year where my weight started crashing during the day, which is a really bad sign for me. So my theory when my weight starts crashing is I got to stop it. So I had 5,000 calories in a span of 2 hours, and it was just repeat, milkshakes and hamburgers for 2 hours. But
sounds wonderful.
John, if you ever make it out here to California, we have an In-N-Out burger, and I'm telling you, people battle about it, but I think In-N-Out is got Five Guys beat. But there is a ice cream place in downtown Columbus near the college that has that uses pasture-raised ice cream.
Yeah. Is it is it Jenny's?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's Jenny's.
They're pretty well known here. They're actually out at Easton now too, where I live at. I mean, they're right here in my area now too. I love raw dairy. We started having our twins drink raw milk when they were 1 year old. It's just there's only one supplier here in Columbus. He's about an hour north of here, and it's just kind of a pain to go get it. But I wish that we didn't have the heavy hand of the government telling us what we could drink.
My little girls drink raw kefir. Goat kefir is what they like. My one little girl, when she drinks cow milk, gets really broken out in her face. So we started feeding them goat kefir when they got off of breast milk. And I don't know if you guys have ever smelled goat kefir. It's pretty sour. And for some reason, these kids crush it all day long. And I look at them, I'm always like, I'll get it on my hand and be like, oh, this stuff smells terrible. But, I'm a huge fan of, the raw and pasteurized stuff. It's just, the only issue out here is now I think it's $10 a half gallon at the market. So $20 for a gallon of milk is something inherently wrong about that.
Yeah, it's getting crazy.
Yeah, we can get raw milk. I can get raw milk out here for about $7 a gallon, and I hammer about 4 gallons a week because it's just awesome.
It's good stuff. All right, so any more questions, Denny?
No, I think that's it. I think we hit everything. John, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks John.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It was a pleasure. Anytime.
Awesome. Luke, you want to wrap up anything that we talked about earlier?
Just thanks again, John. It was amazing. And Wade's Wings, get on it. Get on the team series. Check out the cert schedules. 2014 is getting planned up as we speak. I was actually doing a little multitasking, getting some certs planned. But no, it was a good show, and let's do it again next week, boys.
Sweet. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, awesome. Thanks again, John.
See you
later.
See you guys.